Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We have a great show for you tonight. We are in the midst of our campaign for Measure 80. We're now officially ballot Measure 80, so we're urging you to vote yes on ballot Measure 80. We have some film clips from several media sources, local television stations. When we qualify, that'll be the first round of video clips we have. We have a 10 or 12 minute segment from KATU, two segments actually, that ran over the weekend, and some other surprises. So stay tuned as we bring on our infamous Dancing Cannabis Leaves.
I feel the force.
We're back. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Right. Welcome, viewers. We're working on ballot Measure 80, but we're filming today in our Portland THCF clinic.
This is awesome, Paul, the place that you've put together here with the amazing team of people. This is where patients who really need medical marijuana can actually find relief and find the ability to get their medication without being a criminal, and you help make that happen.
Well, you know, so have our patients, and I just want to put out a big thank you to our patients. Thank you for helping support us. And you know, it's because we think that Measure 80 is going to help patients in a big way. Patients won't have to pay an annual fee. They'll be able to grow their own, and they'll get cannabis at very low costs, both in pharmacies or in cannabis stores. They'll get that at cost and won't be paying the tax that would be raised from the sales for social use to adults. So we think this is going to help patients in a big way too, and we really want to thank you for helping us put this on the ballot with a chance to change the world, make the world a better place.
I like the way you've got it decorated. I like the way it's put together here, and I like the way that the people here are just really reaching out to the community. It's really a world-class environment. For anybody who's never been in such a unique spot in the world, this is a little spot of heaven.
Thanks. So we do see patients here for a variety of conditions, and if patients need help locating a doctor who can help talk to them about medical marijuana, they can give us a call.
One of the things that I've discovered in the news lately, talking about patients needing it, is veterans. Apparently, there's studies that saying that this doesn't really help post-traumatic stress, but we know better.
Well, no, the studies have actually shown it does help
Exactly.
post-traumatic stress. Not that it doesn't help.
But the government's saying the opposite.
Well,
is what I'm saying.
The Veterans Administration has recognized that states have medical marijuana laws, and recently, about 2 years ago, they've come out saying that if you live in a state where medical marijuana is legal and you have a medical marijuana permit, then that's okay for the pain management programs through the Veterans Administration or for any other medical care, that can't really be used against you. So that was a big step forward by the Veterans Administration. In Israel, the Israeli Defense Force, they have come out and give medical marijuana to post-traumatic stress patients, and so it's been part of their regimen for about 8 years now, and so it's recognized, and the studies have all supported that it helps patients with post-traumatic stress.
Well, we've heard over the years how the Israeli army is one of the most advanced in the world, and they certainly have the knowledge that perhaps we should pay more attention to.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you know what? We are going to run some more film clips right now.
Nice.
Of the day that we qualified, or the weekend that we qualified. A little suite of local Portland video clips.
Making history.
Yeah, we'll be back in just a moment.
Well,
than 24 people turned out to support what they hope will be a ballot measure to tax cannabis. Gwen Local 6 reporter Brent Weisberg was in Salem for today's registration deadline and has more from the state capitol.
And good afternoon. The supporters here say they needed to gather more than 80,000 signatures, but in the end they say they got 165. Supporters of I-9, also known as the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act, would like to see marijuana regulated, just like cigarettes and liquor. By doing so, they say the state could tax the marijuana to make a profit. Officials here say that this measure would free up an estimated $60 million in Oregon. They say that money could be used to better fund Oregon's law enforcement agencies.
We specifically drafted this bill to be upheld in federal court, and we did it in several ways. One is we implement a system of controls mandated by international treaty. The system of controls that we implement are directly from the Single Convention Treaty of 1961.
Last year, however, voters rejected a measure to allow dispensaries to sell a small amount of marijuana to people with medical marijuana cards. The Secretary of State's office will have to verify all these signatures, and once that's done and she approves it, this measure will be on the November ballot. Reporting for you in Salem, I'm Brent Weisberg, KOIN Local 6.
An initiative to legalize marijuana may have found its way to the November ballot. Organizers say they turned in enough signatures for the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act today, which would legalize and tax the drug, creating a commission to regulate supply. A similar initiative will be on the ballot in Washington.
A measure to legalize pot in Oregon could be headed to the ballot this November. Supporters of the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act turned in the 165,000 signatures in Salem today. The act would regulate cannabis use for people over the age of 21 and also allow Oregon farmers to grow hemp crops. They say hemp crops can be used for a number of purposes, including food, biofuel, and sustainable fiber.
What we want to do is restore industrial hemp for fuel, fiber, and food products. We think that'll create tens of thousands new living wage jobs. That's why we have the support of Oregon's largest private sector union, the United Food and Commercial Workers Union.
Supporters turned in double the amount of signatures needed. The state will have 30 days to validate them for the ballot.
So that was several Portland television stations coverage right after we made the ballot announcing that we had qualified the Oregon Marijuana Initiative, our Oregon Cannabis Tax Act.
This is really cool. I got to see Jack Hare make history when he found the Henry Ford car. It was made out of plastic when he came running out with Gatewood there. And now I get to watch history like that in the making, and to be part of it is just a thrill, Paul. And you know, the people here in Oregon can also be part of making history, can't they?
Yeah, well, we need to register our voters. That's going to be the most important thing. You know, there are going to be stories out there. What we're hearing right now a lot is that, as you'll see in the clip coming up with your voice, your vote on KATU, we're hearing that they're worried about the gateway effect to kids. That's always been an issue. And so I think the best way to address that is just saying this is in the black market. If we take it out of the black market, that gateway will close. And we'll see the reduction in use in other illegal drugs and in the use of alcohol as well. And so there'll be more use of that as a substitute.
Well, as Ethan Nadelman's pointed out before in his comments, if you got a 14-year-old going down the street to buy some marijuana and he can do it without having to show a license, without having to prove he's old enough, right, and then he's being offered at the same time a little line of Coke, he's like, well, why not? But if he has to go someplace where he's like liquor, you got to show an ID and show you're old enough, then there's nobody else there to go, you want this little line of Coke? And because of that, plus it takes the money out of the black market, so it's not even advantageous for somebody to say, hey, do you want a little line of Coke? It's called rational thinking. You want to end prohibition. It's very simple. You want to end the war on drugs. You want to end the kids getting drugs.
You want to separate the markets, and that's one of the advantages in the Dutch model. They've offered coffee shops to people over the age of 16 specifically to reduce access to harder drugs, and people offering them harder drugs. But you know, marijuana use in and of itself does not necessarily bad for health. In fact, there are a lot of benefits from cannabis. It's an antioxidant and an anti-inflammatory. Obviously, this guy was able to use it, and we're having the start of the Olympics now, and There's a good chance that by
the
next week or two, he's already got 19 medals, and I think he just needs 2 more. He'll tie it.
1 more?
3 more, and he'll have the record for the most.
And he's making how many gold medals? That's like 15, 17.
Yeah, he's already broken that record for gold medals.
Exactly.
By a pretty wide margin. But
and they're coming out with
obviously hadn't harmed him, and he's still breaking records.
And so they're coming out with more studies every day how utilizing marijuana, either in the form of smoking it or in oils or in foods, is better for your body and is doing a lot of great things for your mind, helping with Alzheimer's and a variety of other ailments that we humans fall prey to.
That's true. So another issue that comes up in our campaign is the federal issue. They always say that this is going to violate federal law. Now, we wrote ACTA specifically to be upheld in federal court, and did that in several ways. If you read the text, the first third of the text is a series of findings by the people. And in our form of government, the people are the sovereign, are the leaders. So constitutional law, federal law, and state law, all of those are beneath the will of the people. And so we have findings by the people that are based on historical, scientific, constitutional, and international legal issues. And so by having these findings by the people, we'll give the courts the issue that they need to uphold this. And we also have taken in the system of controls that we implement for the licensing and the requirements of those licenses. We've implemented the controls that are mandated in international treaties. And so in our licensing, we have equitably distributed the licenses among all applicants as well. So we won't have one big company that's dominating the market. The dictates will be that the licenses will be equitably distributed, and the sales will be to meet market demand. So the patients will be getting. Yeah, Monsanto won't like that.
Monsanto won't like that.
They aren't going to help us, but it will allow a wide variety of people to participate, especially the farmers around the state. You know, in the alcohol control states, I mean not alcohol, but in the tobacco regions, they have allotments, so they're able to grow 1 to 5 acres of tobacco to supply the tobacco, and we'll have those sorts of allotments as well for farmers to benefit.
Well, I think some people are concerned it's kind of like drawing a line in the sand. Even, you know, in other states, the federal government has gone into California and they've gone into Colorado.
Yeah. Well, one thing that they've left a lot of them alone, and in the Controlled Substances Act itself, it says that state law supersedes federal drug law at 21 U.S.C. 903, which is if you put that into Google, you'll get a website from the DEA in the section called Application of State Law in the Federal Controlled Substances Act. But we have some more film that we're going to roll now, about a dozen minutes, I think, from KATU that ran on Sunday, July 22nd, I believe. And so we'll be back in just a moment after that.
From K2 News, this is your voice, your vote.
Oregon is one of 3 states voting this November on whether to legalize marijuana for recreational use. Washington and Colorado are the others. The Oregon Cannabis Tax Act, or Measure 80, is now on the ballot, and its passage could have a huge impact on the state. The measure is getting mixed reaction.
I think the state is kind of in a deficit right now. It's something that could generate revenue, and people are using it already.
Frankly, I'm concerned that in some ways it would become a much more broadly used than it is now.
We know you have a lot of questions about this measure, and so do we. Today on Your Voice, Your Vote, we get answers from the man behind Measure 80.
And good morning. I'm Patrick Preston, filling in for Steve Dunn. We thank you for joining us. Voters have many decisions to make this November, from deciding who should be president to selecting the new mayor of Portland, and a number of controversial initiatives, including the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act. What is it? Essentially, it's legalizing marijuana. Measure 80, as it's called, allows anyone 21 and older to grow, possess, and buy marijuana. there are no limits on amounts for personal use. Marijuana could be sold in state-licensed stores. It creates a commission to regulate those stores, and supporters say it'll raise $140 million a year by taxing cannabis sales to adults. Chief Petitioner of Measure 80, Paul Stanford, is here to answer the tough questions. He's owner of a chain of medical marijuana dispensaries around the country, including here in Oregon, and we thank you for being here today, sir.
Sure.
I want to start with a question.
Let me just clarify one thing, if I may.
Sure.
They're not dispensaries. Dispensaries are places that sell marijuana. What I own are clinics where doctors see patients. So I have medical clinics, not dispensaries. I just want to make that clear.
Thanks for clarifying that. Let's start with a question of timing on this. Why is now the right time, in your opinion, to legalize marijuana here in Oregon?
The polls are going our way better than they have in my lifetime. We are seeing majority support across the nation for reforming marijuana laws, and Oregon's always been on the cutting edge of that. You know, Oregon was the first state to decriminalize marijuana back in 1973. And so I think Oregon's a progressive state. We've always been a leader in national policies. So I'm excited and think that now's the time that we can win this election.
Now, let's say you get your way. Paint a picture for us. What do you envision happening? Do you imagine us going down the street and finding the corner store selling marijuana?
No, it'll be state stores, akin to the state liquor stores. So it'll be regulated like liquor and just sold in state stores, just as you can go into a bar and buy alcohol. You'd be able to go into a cannabis bar where minors are not allowed in under the age of 21. We establish laws so there'll be no public consumption. There'll be a fine for that, and jail time for gratuitously providing marijuana to minors, and a serious felony for selling marijuana to minors.
Now, I've heard supporters like yourself say this is common sense policy, but legalizing marijuana isn't common. No other state has done it so far. So how is it common sense if nobody else has done it?
Well, you know, we saw what happened with alcohol prohibition and the gangs, and now we're seeing the same thing with the cartels in Mexico. They're funded by and large by the marijuana sales in the United States. So I think it's common sense to regulate the market and take it out of the hands of the kids and substance abusers who control it today, and put it in the hands of the state where it can generate revenue and be controlled. Currently, the government has abdicated responsibility to control this market, and we establish sound, common sense regulations.
So which voter out there are you thinking of? Somebody who perhaps you need to reach out to, like today. You have a chance to talk to them. Who is it that you're thinking of that is not yet made up their mind on this issue?
Well, you know, senior citizens in particular. You know, a lot of them can recall back to stories about alcohol prohibition, and they were taught that marijuana caused people to go crazy and kill themselves. We call that reefer madness, after a 1937 movie that propagated that misinformation. And so as medical marijuana's become more common, they can see that the sky hasn't fallen, but we need to regulate that market. We need to control it, and that's what we're trying to do.
Now, you've collected the signatures you need to get Measure 80 on the ballot, but you need to sell it to voters still. And part of that pitch is, will it raise a lot of money for the state? But here is one person who's not sold on it yet.
Okay.
Well, I've just never supported legalization of marijuana or taxing marijuana as a way to fund our schools or other public services. So obviously, if they pass, they pass, but I won't be voting for them.
Governor Kitzhaber made that comment last month right here on this show. So why do you think that legalizing pot here in Oregon would be a cash cow for the state?
Well, you know, we have a conservative estimate from Harvard economist Jeffrey Myron. He says that we'll bring in $140 million a year in revenue and save over $60 million in law enforcement costs, arresting growers and marijuana dealers who are currently profiting in the black market. So we think that's over $200 million a year, $400 million in the biennium, roughly 5% of the state budget.
You know, the counter to that is that the black market will still exist, that there will still be the cartels and everybody else that you're worried about doing the illegal business, trying to avoid the taxes.
Well, you know, they say there are moonshiners too, but I don't see many people selling liquor on the open market, and I know you don't see many people selling black market cigarettes either. So we think that regulating the market, most people will take advantage of those stores and not want to break the law if they're given a legal opportunity.
Let's say they follow your thought there and they go through it the legal route. How do you arrive at $140 million in taxes?
From the sales of cannabis, currently they say the market here is $1.5 billion. We think the price of cannabis will come down significantly. Again, that's an estimate from Harvard economist Jeffrey Myron, and he said that it would bring in $9 billion on a national basis and $140 million per year in the state of Oregon.
I'm sure a lot of folks want to track those dollars, so let's talk about the structure of the taxes. Are you going to look to tax by the ounce, by the transaction, by the license fee? How is this going to work?
Well, there'll be license fees. In fact, all of the lab testing and any legal challenges to the law will be paid by license fees. And then we direct the new Cannabis Commission that we create to set the price to lower the incentive to export cannabis to other states. While the price is high because marijuana is prohibited in Idaho or California or Washington State, the price will be higher to discourage that sort of illegal export. But I think the price will come down. It's very inexpensive to grow. If the price is the same as wine, we can anticipate that the production costs are going to be $20 a pound. So the ounce price on that is $1.50, and so if we can bring in $50 to $100 in revenue for something that only costs, let's say, under $5 to produce, it'll bring in a lot more taxes than cigarettes and alcohol do.
So your plan is to keep prices high, not to let them fall where the market allows them?
Let them fall somewhat. I mean, you know, the current market price is $200 to $500 an ounce. I anticipate initially the cost will be $50 to $100 an ounce, but that price will come down over time. And then people will be able to grow their own as well. So if they can't afford that, then they'll be able to grow. And just as there's no limit on the amount of beer a person can possess or alcohol a person can possess, we think it's really an issue of freedom, and that cannabis deserves to be regulated, and adults such as myself don't deserve to be labeled criminals.
And clear up for me, could anybody get a license? Could I apply and get a license?
Yeah, anyone who hasn't been found guilty of the fees we didn't determine. They'll be calculated to defray the costs. And so we don't say what the fees for the license will be. You need a license to grow it. We anticipate farmers will be the main people to benefit from that, a license to process it, and a license to sell it.
Now, money could be a selling point for some, but the counter-argument is that increased marijuana use has many social costs. I want you to respond, if you can, to a comment we received from a Facebook follower named Amanda. She writes of marijuana, "It's a drug, plain and simple. That will alter your state of mind, and I prefer not to be on the road in my car while other people have chosen to smoke it and then drive. It's bad enough we have to put up with drunk drivers, let alone high drivers, not to mention it's a gateway drug to other drugs. Addictions cause too much pain and hurt to loved ones. I pray it does not pass." Paul, why should Oregon embrace a law that could lead to more addiction, perhaps more impaired drivers on the road?
Well, currently, marijuana is here, and it's here to stay, and we need to regulate that market. We leave the driving under the influence laws in place so that there won't be any more inebriated drivers. It's less debilitating than alcohol, but still we keep the laws in place for driving under the influence. When it comes to the gateway drug argument, the National Academy of Science in their Institute of Medicine report, Marijuana as Medicine, back 10 years ago, said that that's a fallacy, that marijuana isn't a gateway drug. You know, for me, I think it might be a gateway to the refrigerator. But in terms of a gateway to other drugs, it's a gateway to the black market. So when you take marijuana out of the black market and you regulate it, that gateway will disappear. I know opponents will take issue with that, and we'll hear from them as we get closer to the election. But I want to ask you, because part of this law sets aside money for drug treatment. I believe it's 7% of the proceeds of tax revenue. That's right. By setting aside that money for drug treatment, are you acknowledging that this will create problems? Sure, and you know, currently alcoholics and addicts can't get the help they need when they need it. They're turned away 95% of the time unless they've got $10,000 a week to pay for treatment. So we wanted to address the concerns regarding drug treatment and use some of the money to help people who do have drug problems.
Oh, well, if you're creating problems with this law...
Well, I'm not saying we're creating them. I'm saying that those problems exist, and currently those people aren't getting the help they need, and we're going to provide money so that they will. I think that if someone has a problem with marijuana, where they're stealing to get marijuana, or they're not fulfilling their duties and obligations to others, they need treatment. We'll provide money for that treatment. Just the same way that the lottery provides money for people who have gambling problems. The Oregon Liquor Control Commission provides money a little bit for alcoholics. We'll provide a lot more than either one of those do.
And you don't think there will be more people seeking out that treatment if you legalize marijuana?
No, I think that overall the use will drop. I really do. I think that the incentive is the black market, and a lot of people want to taste the forbidden fruit. And so I think by taking that that stigma away, it will help make it legitimate market.
Would that argument then fall under the idea that during Prohibition more people drank back then?
It does.
Than
It does.
Right now?
More people did drink. In fact, it was very common during alcohol prohibition for entire high schools to close down because the student body was drunk. Currently, kids have more access to marijuana, and so we want to take it out of the high school kids and let adults have safe access to it.
I want to look into that. I appreciate you bringing that up.
Sure.
A recent poll by Public Policy Polling shows the measure failing right now among Oregonians who they asked. It's failing 46 to 43%, and there's 11% who are unsure. One local organization very concerned about any increase in marijuana use is Lines for Life. It's a substance abuse treatment program. Let's listen to their take on legalizing marijuana.
Well, the biggest single concern we have is when you have an increase in a substance available to youth. It really changes things. We know, for example, any substance abuse by somebody, the younger they start, 11, 12, 13 years old, the more likely they are to have a lifetime of substance abuse issues, be it alcohol or marijuana or prescription drugs or anything else. That's going to ratchet up their opportunities. The taxes that you get for that are far outweighed by the cost to society in terms of health, accidents, problems with families, and other issues.
There you hear them talking about the impact on kids and on youth. I want to ask you, how much consideration did you give when you were pushing for this, when you wanted to get this in place to legalize marijuana here, the impact it would have on kids, on youth?
Well, you know, I'm a parent. I have 3 teenagers, young adults. All the chief petitioners on this initiative are parents and grandparents. I was able to access marijuana in high school. There were other kids selling it to me in school, and we want to, and currently kids have easier access to marijuana than many adults do. And so we want to take it out of the hands of those kids. You don't see kids selling beer and liquor in the schools anymore, but back during alcohol prohibition you did. And so we want to regulate the market and control it. Currently, the government has abdicated responsibility to those least able to control the market.
But aren't you getting kids closer to this if their older brother, their uncle, their cousin, any of those individuals can legally buy it?
They already are. It's already there in the, they can illegally buy it today. In fact, they can just go down the street to their buddy in school and buy it. And so it really will control the market rather than make it more available to kids.
One of the arguments that I've heard supporters make is that this will improve youth and public safety, and I had to question that. How is this going to make Oregon safer?
It will allow the police to concentrate their resources. Currently, according to this estimate from Jeffrey Myron, over $60 million a year that they spend incarcerating marijuana growers and dealers, they can use to go after thieves and murderers and people who harm others.
Do you know how many marijuana growers are in prison?
I can tell you that annually there are about 800,000 arrests here in the United States. Those are arrests where they're taken into jail. And 90% of those are for simple possession. And so I can't tell you the exact number, but I do know in the United States right now there are several thousand people in prison who just sold marijuana, who never owned a gun, never threatened another person, and they've been sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. And so currently, to send someone to jail for life without the possibility of parole for a victimless crime is just wrong. And so we're here to redress that wrong.
The law that you've set in place, the language, would make the legal age 21 years old. Why 21?
Well, that's the age we have for alcohol. And so That's the age that society has long held, that people fully are ready to accept the responsibilities of adulthood. And so that's the age that we wanted to go.
Paul Stanford, we appreciate you taking time to talk with us today, and we'll be following this issue all the way until November. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll be right back.
So that was a clip from KATU's Sunday morning talk show called Your Voice, Your Vote. And as you can see, they focused on marijuana exclusively.
You know,
it was interesting that the governor came in. You know, I thought about bringing up the fact that I know several people back in the 70s and 80s who smoked marijuana with Governor Kitzhaber, and now he signed the bill to recriminalize marijuana back in 1997, and we had to get 90,000 signatures to put that up for a vote, and we won every county in the state with about 67% of the vote. That was 1998's ballot measure 57.
You mean there'd actually be a politician who could win an office of some sort who formerly actually smoked marijuana and would now actually be sitting in an office someplace?
Hypocritically signed a bill to recriminalize marijuana.
I can't imagine.
And now opposes marijuana, at least in this. Well,
I wonder what the president would think about that.
Yeah, well, that's another issue.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I noticed,
go ahead.
too, that the news, we got medical marijuana, which is really great, because they can't really dispute that because of all the findings, but now they want to call it the pot initiative. The pot initiative is like something new, and it's not.
I try not to use the word pot because it's derogative.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a good thing.
They don't talk about the industrial hemp. We're talking about paper, fiber, fuel, right?
Yeah, and we have some fabric here from a local shop of different.
This is
different
what we're
kinds.
talking about.
100% hemp canvas. It's pretty nifty stuff. And here's some package of hemp paper. It's imported from China. It'd be great if our farmers could be making that. They didn't talk about the hemp aspect of our initiative, that it would allow industrial hemp, and I really believe that will be a much larger economic engine than the sale of marijuana. I think that hemp seed in particular, the seed oil, the seed protein for fuel and fiber, those are and energy, those are going to be the biggest markets.
And we only need to look at our neighbor, Canada. They have a huge hemp industry where they have an amazing array of fabulous foods that are good for the body. They got great hemp oils that have been shown to be healing for different types of elements. The government of Canada is actually underwriting the cost of promoting the hemp industry because of all the fantastic things it does for the economy and all the jobs that it creates. You would think that the politicians, not only of this state but of this country, would be embracing that too. And instead of calling it the pot initiative, which is what it's not, they'd be calling it the hemp initiative. It's like apples and oranges. We're not talking about oranges. What? The pot's like, what, 1% of the plant, right?
Well,
and the hemp's the everything else.
Hemp is the stems and the stalks and the seeds currently. And so the flowers really only appear in the last 2 months of their growth cycle. So
the most valuable part is the hemp, right?
Well, the seed oil, it depends on exactly what it's cultivated for. I really think that in the future, though, the seed oil and the seed protein and the biofuels are going to be the most economically viable parts of it. I think it's going to create lots of jobs and create several new industries and put Oregon on the cutting edge of the development of these new industries.
That's another cool thing about this, that people of Oregon have got to realize. You're making history by coming down to the polls, by making certain that you vote absentee if you're going to be at a university or working out of state at the time and can't actually be physically in the state to vote. You're making history. In Indiana, we couldn't do that. And Texas, they can't do that. But you can do that here in Oregon by ending this prohibition, by creating a law that will make it so that Mother Earth can start to heal, that the paradigm of mankind can change.
The most important thing that we can get folks to do is to, at this point, is to register and vote and educate your family and friends that we need you to vote yes on ballot measure 80 here in the state of Oregon on November 6th. The same time we'll have the presidential election, in the general election, Tuesday, November 6th. We need you to register and vote. You need to register before, I think it's about the 13th of October, and get that into your county elections office. but the sooner the better. So if you're not registered, register, get your family, get your friends, and be sure to mail those ballots in. You know, you don't have to vote on everything else if you don't want to.
Right.
You can just vote on the things. There are a lot of elections that I don't vote on because I don't know all these different judges running for all these. I don't vote on things that I'm not sure
or maybe
which way to vote.
Maybe you know both
we
candidates.
Want you to definitely register, vote, and vote yes on ballot measure 80.
Then maybe you know both candidates and you just think, I can't vote. But you can vote for this and change the world and make a different environment for not just tomorrow's kids, but their kids as well.
That's true. That's true. And it'll have a huge impact on the environment. We won't have to cut down trees for paper and building materials anymore. We won't have to
oil pollution.
Oil. We'll be able to make plastics from hemp oil.
Oh, that plastic island out there in the ocean that's accumulating, it would dissolve because all that was hemp.
Yeah. It would be more biodegradable for certain, and it wouldn't be made in such a toxic way. So we wouldn't have the pollution, and there'd be a balance as well in carbon in the atmosphere. Right now, we're taking carbon deposits out of the ground, pumping them into the atmosphere when we burn them for fuel, and that's setting the carbon has been dramatically increasing over our lifetimes.
The White House staff and Michelle and the kids are importing hemp cloth to.
They're selling a hemp cloth product on the Obama website right now. They are selling a garment that is actually made from hemp on President Obama's website as a campaign fundraiser.
And that has to be imported because you can't make that here in America. So that's being imported either from probably China. Right. Oh my gosh, China, like the Olympic clothes, China. Yeah. Or maybe Canada, who has this fabulous, thriving hemp industry creating jobs and great products.
Yeah. So we urge you to get registered. We urge you to get your friends to register. That's the most important thing that we can do right now. Every person that we register and get to vote in favor of this is like changing the minds of one or two other people. Well, so we really need to register, really need to get people out there and vote yes on 80. So one of the things that has happened the past week is we've received the endorsement of the Libertarian presidential and vice presidential candidates. Former New Mexico Governor Gary Johnson, a two-term Republican governor, and a judge in California Superior Court in Orange County, Judge James Gray. And so Judge Gray has written a book on why we've lost the war on marijuana. And so both of them have endorsed the initiative, and we expect to see them out here in the near future.
In fact, the day that the judge was off to Las Vegas to take the stage to stand alongside Gary Johnson as a running mate, you and I were lucky enough to have him on Time for Hemp, my radio show, as a guest, and you and the judge really hit it off well. I think it would be a good matchup to see the two of you come out and feed brains.
Well, we have another film clip from KATU that they ran shortly before, about an hour before they played this on Sunday morning, or a half hour. So we'll be back in just a minute after you watch that.
Your voice, your vote now, and in just a few months, voters will decide whether to make marijuana legal in Oregon. The Oregon Cannabis Tax Act, also known as Measure 80, would allow anyone 21 and older to grow, possess, and buy marijuana. There would be no limits on personal use, and the marijuana would be sold in state-licensed stores. Measure 80 would create a commission to regulate those stores, and supporters say it would raise $140 million in a year of taxes for the state. As KTU's Patrick Preston reports, polls show the measure is losing right now, but it's close, and supporters say senior citizens will be the key group between now and November.
This and this and this could all be legal next year if Oregon voters approve Measure 80.
We think it's really an issue of freedom, and that cannabis deserves to be regulated, and adults such as myself don't deserve to be labeled criminals.
Appearing on Your Voice, Your Vote, Chief Petitioner Paul Stanford says Measure 80 would generate millions in taxes for the state by creating the pot version of state-licensed liquor stores and pot bars.
just as you can go into a bar and buy alcohol, you'd be able to go into a cannabis bar where minors are not allowed in under the age of 21.
The taxes that you get for that are far outweighed by the cost to society in terms of health, accidents, problems with families, and other issues.
On the other side of the issue, Tom Parker's organization, Lines for Life, is particularly worried that legalizing pot would lead more kids to the drug, lead to more addiction, and to more impaired drivers behind the wheel.
If you really like the feeling of being stoned, you're going to want to kind of go after that more often. You're going to tend to go after that.
You don't think there will be more people seeking out that treatment if you legalize marijuana?
No, I think that overall the use will drop. I really do. I think that the incentive is the black market, and a lot of people want to taste the forbidden fruit.
Stanford says a state cannabis commission would set pot prices artificially high to discourage exports out of state, while Parker questions the effectiveness of state regulation.
You're going to have a ton of supply out there. One of the arguments about this is also it's going to get rid of the black market. It's hardly going to do that. People are going to be involved in tax evasion. Why pay for the taxes on these things if you can do it out the back door quite easily?
Patrick Preston, K2 News.
Washington is also putting legalization up to the voters, but federal law still prohibits marijuana possession and sales. As we said, Measure 80 is failing right now, and the percentage rate is 46 to 43%, with 11% undecided. And those numbers are according to a poll released this month by Public Policy Polling.
That film clip from Channel 2 played on Sunday, July 22nd, and she said that we were losing at this PPP poll, and in fact that poll asked the question, are you in favor of legalizing marijuana? That is a very broad statement. They did not poll on the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act. They didn't talk about industrial hemp, and that's one of the things that this coverage with KATU did not even discuss is, again, the issue of industrial hemp, which I think is a big part of this equation. So they bring up this poll, which wasn't a marijuana-based poll. It was a poll on about 20 different subjects, like what's your favorite sports team, and a lot of different things. And one of the questions was, are you in favor of legalizing marijuana? Well, they didn't say, are you in favor of regulating the sales to people who are over the age of 21 and allowing industrial hemp and what our initiative, Ballot Measure 80, will do. So that poll does not really apply to this at all, and it's taken out of context to address it.
Well, it's kind of like what they did in the 1930s when they got the farmers to vote to outlaw. They went down and asked the farmers, do you want to outlaw marijuana because it makes all the Mexicans get wacky and all that stuff. They, well, of course we want to outlaw it. And they went
do you want to stop growing hemp? No, you can't take away my underwear.
Yeah, they would have asked
canvas,
that. Exactly.
My linen and lace and canvas and rope.
So how they came out and said, do you want to create...
They're illuminate, too. They burned it in their oil lamps and used it in their diesel engines.
So had they asked in this poll, do you want to create new jobs with the industrial hemp?
Right. We would have seen a huge jump, over 60%.
Right. Or if they would have said, do you want to stop arresting people for touching a plant?
Do we want to stop the complete breakdown of our government services? Because that's what's happening right now. We're closing our schools. We're cutting back on repairing our roads. We'll create a lot of new jobs, and we have record unemployment for a prolonged period of time.
Well, and
the longest period since the Great Depression.
I've noticed that the news doesn't cover is the amount of money that's being spent on arresting, trying, and incarcerating people for a plant for Mother Nature. And instead of taking that money and putting it into libraries to keep the libraries open, and
there are dozens of people in federal prison right now for life without the possibility of parole, and these people never sold drugs except for marijuana. They had no weapons. They hadn't hurt anyone. They never harmed another. They're in prison for life without the possibility of parole, simply for a victimless crime. And several of the people who've been on this show, like Eddie Lepp and Dr. Molly Fry and Attorney Schaefer, her husband, they are in federal prison right now. And others like Roger Christie in Hawaii, he's being held without trial, without bail,
right,
for over 2 years now.
And they even go over across the border and drag Mark Emery down here from another country.
Right. They brought him for selling seeds.
Not even a plant, just the seeds. When other people in his country were also selling seeds, it's just that Mark was taking his money and putting it into political campaigns to help end the prohibition. And people who are looking at this as something to vote on also need to follow the money. The reason why it is outlawed is because it is in direct competition with the petrochemical companies, it is in direct competition with the drug companies, because if you can grow your own plant for 3 or 4 cents or for a couple of bucks, you don't need to spend $450 a month for antidepressants to calm you down. Just saying.
So, and then they had the fellow from the drug treatment facility there espousing the same gateway theories, and those have been, the Institute of Medicine from the National Academy of Sciences, they have put out a report called Marijuana as Medicine, and in that report they have said that marijuana is not a gateway drug, and that the gateway drug argument is specious and it isn't accurate.
I know personally from firsthand, I quit smoking cigarettes by utilizing medical marijuana, and I know a lot of people who have quit not only nicotine but have given up a variety of other addictive substances, including sugar, by using hemp and medical marijuana. And so it's not really a gateway drug to other things. If anything, it's a gateway drug to good health. It's a gateway drug away from addictions.
Well, there's a fellow out there who's been on the road again for many years, and he has seems to be in pretty good health. And so we'd like to bring on one of our early endorsers, Mr. Willie Nelson. Here's a little clip from Willie Nelson.
We love you, Willie.
Hi, I'm Willie Nelson, and I urge you to support the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act to regulate marijuana and restore industrial hemp. This initiative will end adult marijuana prohibition and let our criminal justice officers focus limited resources on real criminals and not on marijuana users like me. OCTA will also allow farmers to grow hemp for fuel, fiber, and food to create jobs and help our economy. Please support OCTA. Thank you.
Once again, thank you, Willie Nelson, for supporting our initiative. He also gave us over $10,000 to help us pay for the petition drive.
Thank you, Willie. You are helping to make history.
Individual donor during the petition drive portion.
He's an amazing guy. He really is.
And so if you're out there, you want to help us, you can go to our website. That's OCTA2012, OCTA2012.org. There you can read the text of this law, you can sign up to help us, and you can donate. You can make a donation to our campaign. Donations are, there's a tax credit here in the state of Oregon, so if you donate up to $50 a person, $100 for married couples filing jointly, then when you file your taxes next year, you get up to $50 back, 1 for 1. You do, it's not a deduction, it's a tax credit on Oregon state income tax. So that's something you can take advantage of at OCTA 2012. Another thing they talked about in that film clip was that some people would be evading the taxes. We estimate that it will raise $140 million a year in new tax revenue, plus over $60 million in savings from arresting marijuana growers and sellers now. There are hundreds of them in jail here in Oregon. The state of Oregon spends over $60 million a year. They can reallocate those resources to real criminals.
He's talking about all these hippies.
People won't be
growing. They'll be growing tons of pot in their backyard, selling it to Indiana and Wyoming and Texas.
Well, it'll be legalized in those states too in short order. Especially if we see Washington, Colorado, and Oregon all pass our marijuana legalization bills, then we will see it'll be like the Berlin Wall falling for the end of communism in Eastern Europe, or the toppling of the statue of Lenin in Red Square for the falling of the USSR.
And that's not an understatement. That's why I've said earlier, and I'll say it again, the people in this state, when they go and vote, they have a chance to make history.
It'll be a ray of hope to the people that are arrested here in the United States, over 800,000 a year. Those sitting in jail for life without the possibility of parole. Those people facing execution in Southeast Asia for small amounts of marijuana. This will send a positive message and make Oregon the most legal marijuana place in the world for now, and put us on the cutting edge of exciting new economic developments, not just in the sale of marijuana as an adult social substance, but also for industrial hemp fuel, fiber, and food. And that's the real key, that we need to get that message out.
Two real questions. The first is, there's people out there who say, oh, the children is going to take the state into a dark abyss where it's going to be just one cesspool of one gigantic
Well, now, as I
mess.
said in that, the kids have the control of the market. We've abdicated responsibility. Kids have easier access to marijuana than adults do. So this will take it out of the hands of the kids and substance abusers who control the market today and put it in liquor stores or our stores that are strictly enforced.
Then the other
Raised
question
and
is,
enforced.
the most amazing thing, if it was voted into law, the most amazing thing about ending the prohibition on this plant would be the most amazing benefit. Hemp fuel?
I think hemp fuel is going to be the most amazing thing, that we will be able to create a whole large biofuel industry, and that will dramatically assist our economy and make Oregon the center of that. You know, we already have the largest biodiesel company in the state of Oregon. It's the largest in the United States. It's Sequential Pacific Biofuels. Willie Nelson's one of their stockholders. He's done several press conferences at their production facilities down in Salem, in the Salem area, for Sequential Biodiesel. We'll make them the Exxon of the new biodiesel industry. So hopefully we'll see some support from them. But you know, we're about out of time. So we once again want to urge you folks to register and vote, and get out there and get your family and friends to register to vote.
Can I remind them about this little show I do?
Yeah, go right ahead.
I got a little radio show. It's Monday through Friday on AmericanFreedomRadio.com, heard at 10 to 11 a.m. Pacific Standard, which happens to be 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard. Please tune in. Mondays we have Healthy Mondays with Mary Lynn Mathery and her husband Al Byrne, about how important it is for your body to stay healthy. Tuesdays we salute the people up in Canada and all around the world who appreciate this plant. Wednesdays is Leap Day, law enforcement against prohibition. Many judges and people who worked in the front lines wearing the uniforms of the officers do not like this prohibition and want to see it end, and they come on the show. On Thursdays, Paul Stanford is the joint host every Thursday, and we discuss all the things going on across America that's ending prohibition. And on Fridays, it is Small Town Fridays, putting a spotlight on all the hardworking activists that don't normally get the attention. So please take time for hemp.
And you can help us put hemp in the history books by passing Measure 80. You can go to OCTA2012 or go to our web portal at hemp.org, HEMP.org. Tune in next week. We'll have another tape show. Our next live show will be on August 10th. We're gearing up for the Seattle Hemp Fest on the 17th, 18th, and 19th of August. And our Portland Hempstock Festival is coming up on September 8th and 9th. So go to our website, hemp.org, for more information. Tune in next week. Get out there, register, get your friends registered, and help us restore hemp. Good night.
Well, let's take our culture back. Take our culture back. Get the monkey off of your back and take our culture back. Well, now we've been here for 1,000,000 years. Music filling up the people's ears, and we always sang our own song until the music business came along. Now I don't know, I could be wrong, but I ain't about to just tag along behind somebody with a bankroll hanging out, telling me what I can sing about. So let's take our culture back. Take our culture back. Get the monkey off of your back and take our culture back. We got got the radio, you got the TV screen, you got the great muddy waters of the mainstream with the dollar bill hitting on every word. You're never gonna get your message heard over some little buddy with an extra buck to buy a transmitter and try their luck. Pirate airwave democracy, that seems like a good idea to me. So let's take our culture back. Take our culture back. Get the monkey off of your back and take our culture back. Hollywood spectacle and promenade. Think of all that money just waiting to be made, and all you gotta do is go, and you'll be sitting up pretty on Gangsters Road. Now it ain't smart to be misled by some Beavis and Butthead. You either have your hip Seattle slacker, just give me a good computer hacker. Let's take our culture back. Take our culture back. You get the monkey off of your back and take our culture back. You gotta get inside to break it out. You gotta be outside to know what I'm talking about. 2 heads and 1,000,000 eyes. We can cut this thing right down to size. Now culture is weaponry. In all our great humanity and survival is a counterattack. So let's take our culture back. Let's take our culture back. Take our culture back. And get the monkey off of your back. And take our culture back.